Trauma is not exactly necessarily what happened to you, as in the case of big T trauma. In the case of small t trauma, it's what happened inside of you resulting from what happened.
I would say deep intimacy is, do you know your partner's trauma language? Because everybody's experienced some level of trauma in their life, and it's usually those wounds, unresolved wounds, that show up the most in adult relationships.
You start to realize that your partner isn't your savior, isn't your medicine, isn't there to complete you or make you whole. When you start to gain the awareness through this process of individuation that your partner's just another human like you.
Free to be me, free to sing, sweet feathers envelop me like a hug.
The Safe to Be Seen podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Darci and Brandon Burke do not claim to be experts. We have no intention to defend our beliefs or impose them onto others. This podcast provides a space to allow for us to share with others what it's like to be us. We desire to share our human journey with others. We advise you to seek professional counsel, therapy, and/or treatment from trained, credentialed, and certified professionals for any emotional, mental, and/or physical conditions you may be experiencing. So, Darci, how would you define intimacy?
I would define intimacy as the experience of being deeply seen and known, and felt by somebody else, without having to perform or to be a certain way. Deeply seen and known intimately, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I think in specifically talking about adult relationships, we often use language, do you know your partner's love language? But I would say deep intimacy is, do you know your partner's trauma language? Because everybody's experienced some level of trauma in their life, and it's usually those wounds, unresolved wounds, that show up the most in adult relationships. And knowing your partner's trauma language is, I think, in our experience at least, is where deep intimacy is developed, where you're really seen and really known intimately by your person, without having to perform. You're just accepted in that. Which, by the way, speaking of partner, I don't like the word partner. I feel like we're in like a cowboy western movie. What's another word we could use?
Or like a business relationship.
Like saddle up partner.
Saddle up partner. Yeah. Although you love saying saddle up partner.
I love saying saddle up partner, but it just feels weird saying it mate. But then it's mate? Like, we're not Australian.
No, we're not. But we could use that terminology even though we're not, I guess. Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, that's beautiful. I love your definition of intimacy. And I think there are probably several definitions of intimacy. I remember, I used to believe, like, for me, intimacy meant physical, just like your physical connection or your physical interactions, in our relationship. Intimacy, I think, is confused a lot with like sex.
Yeah. And
that physical part of relationship. But yeah, for me, I define intimacy as 3 parts. The first part is my ability and my commitment to do my own inner work, to work on improving my emotional intelligence, increasing my awareness around myself, ultimately self-discovery, right? Working on me. And the second part would be allowing all of me, allowing my full human experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, my light and my darkness, to be seen by you, allowing you to witness me. And the third part being having a deep, sincere desire to do the same for you, to witness your human experience, you know, to see all of you and to know, like really desire to know, what is it like to be Darci? You know, that's how I view intimacy. But I think that's very similar to, just maybe in different words, to what you said.
Yeah. Intimacy. I feel like in order to have a really deep, intimate connection with somebody, you first have to know yourself intimately.
Yeah.
Because you cannot give another what you do not know or have within yourself.
Yeah, true.
So it requires, like you said, knowing yourself first.
Yeah.
Becoming familiar with your shadows, with your wounds.
Yeah.
All of you.
Yeah. You know, and that process of self-discovery was termed by Carl Jung individuation. And that just means that's the lifelong process. It's not a destination that you reach. It's a lifelong process of becoming whole, of returning to self, of knowing deeply who you are and living that way, you know, living authentically. The interesting thing is that marriage can be a threat to individuation. If the partners in the marriage, or whatever your romantic relationship looks like, it doesn't have to be marriage, of course, but in your romantic relationship, if the partners are unconscious to their projections of fear, of their unhealthy attachments, of their unconscious repeated patterns that create disconnection, contention, that process, which I believe is the purpose of life, individuation, whatever you want to call it, self-discovery, finding yourself, living authentically, however you want to look at it, that process is, to me, the purpose of life. And romantic relationship can put a damper on that. If you're stuck in those patterns without even knowing, without even being aware of why are you the way you are? Why do you react in such a way when your partner does XYZ things? Why are you projecting, you know, so you don't even know that you're projecting onto your partner certain fears deeply held within you because you're unaware of them.
Yeah. They say 95% of our lives are lived unconsciously.
Yeah.
That's
just on autopilot.
A massive amount of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just walking around on autopilot.
Yeah.
Reacting. And so romantic relationship intimacy can be a threat to individuation and that process of self-discovery in that way, but also the inverse is true. And individuation can be a threat to your romantic relationship, to your intimate relationship, to your marriage. Because if let's say one partner in the relationship is evolving, is doing the inner work, is expanding their consciousness, is increasing their awareness around why they are the way they are, working on healing, the relationship bond that was perhaps based on those unconscious patterns that you know, sometimes termed a trauma bond, you know, the drama or the high of love, you know, of relationship, when that starts to kind of unravel and you start to see yourself and your partner as just a human, special to you, yes, but maybe you start to realize that your partner isn't your savior, isn't your medicine, isn't there to complete you or make you whole. When you start to gain the awareness through this process of individuation that your partner's just another human like you, and you start to see the otherness in your other, that can cause disconnection. That can cause, one partner to evolve in one direction while the other partner just kind of stays on the path that they've been on, stuck in autopilot.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so today we thought we'd talk a little bit about this dynamic of, okay, where do we start? Like, if we want this deep connection with our partner in our relationship, sorry, I used the word partner, our mate, our person, where do we start? Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And, I wanted to, with a little bit of vulnerability, I wanted to tell a retell, a pattern that I had to become aware of, or just a part of me that was needing to be seen, needing to be witnessed. And I'll just kind of set up, it's really, unfortunately, it's not a hypothetical situation, but I'm kind of stating it hypothetically in that this isn't like a specific thing that happened, but let's just say I come home from a really long, stressful, hard day of work. And I arrive at the house, I open the door, I come in, I see you in the kitchen. You're busy preparing dinner for us and the kids. And I'm expecting some grand welcome, some maybe a big hug and a kiss, and oh my gosh, I missed you so much. Thank you for working so hard for us. So grateful that you support, all these things that you support, you provide for our family, and you're so busy cooking dinner, and you've got little kids running around and making messes, and your phone's ringing, and you're thinking about who knows what that happened in your day.
Yeah.
And I react in a way that disconnects us. And that could be me internalizing the way you welcomed me or didn't welcome me based on how I expected or needed you to welcome me in that moment. I may react in a way that reveals deep truths about myself, such as, I may distance myself from you. I may shut down. I may close my heart off to you. I may go quiet. And, we eat dinner. We sit down as a family, eat dinner. It's delicious. It's wonderful.
Of course it is.
Of course. You're an amazing cook. And later on in the evening when we put the kids to bed, we have a few moments of you and I time after our crazy days. You notice that I'm very withdrawn. I'm very quiet. I'm not angry. I'm not doing anything overtly angry or mean, but you notice that I've closed down. And you approach me and you say, "What's wrong?" I can tell something's not right. And I say something like, "Oh no, everything's fine. I'm good. I'm just tired. I had a busy day. I'm good." When deep down inside, I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling difficult emotions. And, this is just an example, kind of hypothetical, kind of not, of some of the work that I had to that's the work, is to understand why am I not able to come home? Yes, I had a hard, busy, stressful day at work, maybe, but to come home and be able to see you and understand that maybe you did too. Maybe you had a hard day at home, taking care of kids, cooking, cleaning, doing all the things that you had to do, the stresses, the ups and downs, the hopes and dreams of Darci.
Mm-hmm.
And why couldn't I see that and make a choice in that moment of coming home and being disappointed about the way you welcomed me or didn't, whatever you did or didn't do, and make a choice in that moment of understanding your humanness, seeing your humanness, and not internalizing and making personal how you received me.
Yeah. So common, and so many different variations of that happen in your relationships. I think ultimately, Brand, what you were experiencing was you got triggered by that experience, had enough flavoring to it to remind you of some experience from the past where you didn't feel seen, you didn't feel appreciated, you didn't feel noticed. And everybody experiences triggers. And it's like we spoke about earlier, that we are mirrors of each other, of noticing. It all points back to you. Your triggers are just there to show you where you are not free in life. And it's an opportunity for you to go inward and to pause and reflect of, why am I feeling this way in this moment? And what is it reminding me of? This is what conscious relationships are. Conscious people, conscious relationships do, of taking a moment to pause and reflect on, okay, when you know yourself deeply, when you know your parts, which we'll talk about that today, and you have a better understanding of why you are the way that you are, then you don't unconsciously project those wounds onto your partner in your relationship.
Yeah, so true. So today we're going to talk a little bit about trauma, just in general. We'll dive into much more detail about trauma and its individual aspects in further episodes. But so trauma, Peter Levine, an expert on the subject, he talked about this process that I just described as tyranny of the past, meaning that in that moment that what you called triggered, when I was triggered by coming home and not receiving the welcome that I felt like I deserved or needed, that trigger just pointed to a wound from my past. Like you said, of perhaps not being seen, not being fully appreciated or valued for my work or whatever. And you are literally in that moment, without the awareness, without, like you said, taking that moment to pause and to understand and know yourself so deeply, know your wounding, know your triggers. Without that awareness, you are literally teleported to a past version of yourself. It's incredible. It's as if you step into some time machine and you, at warp speed, go back to some past version of yourself. And your present moment, the present version of yourself, is literally hijacked by that process. And you become not yourself.
Yeah. You become the version of you that experienced that overwhelming moment.
Yeah.
Essentially, you become the nervous system of that child or version of you that experienced something that was too overwhelming for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, trauma, Darcy, is endemic, meaning it's everywhere, in everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some may say, what are you talking about? Like, why are... I've actually had people say this to me. What are you so dramatic about, Brandon? You've had a wonderful life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, I have.
Mm-hmm.
I've been extraordinarily blessed. And as a human being in this human experience, I have been wounded.
Mm-hmm.
I have experienced trauma. So a lot of times we talk about trauma in regards to two different classifications. One being what is sometimes termed big T trauma. And examples of this may be losing a loved one, being in war, experiencing divorce, some horrific accident. There's several examples, of course. Those are just a few, but something really big.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's also what is termed small T trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the more pervasive, more endemic form of trauma. And this is when, like we spoke to earlier, trauma is not exactly necessarily what happened to you,
Mm-hmm.
as in the case of big T trauma. In the case of small T trauma, it's what happened inside of you resulting from what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the physiological, emotional, psychic reaction inside of you as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
resulting from an event or an occasion or something someone said to you or did to you. But what's interesting, Darcy, is trauma is not always something bad that happened to you, whether in the case of big T or small T trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma can also be something good that did not happen for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true. Trauma is too much, too soon, too fast, or not enough. You didn't receive what you needed. Trauma is an overwhelming event that occurs to you, that happens to you, that you did not have the capacity within yourself to be able to find resolution with at that time. And you're right, trauma isn't so much about the event, it's about what happened inside of you because of that event. And, in speaking about capital T trauma and lowercase t trauma, I like referring it to that way, but trauma is trauma. It's because it's more about what happened inside of you because of an event. And we are all, as we're developing, and our nervous systems are developing over time. Everybody has a different amount of capacity that they have within themselves to be able to hold an overwhelming event. And that's why a lot of these experiences are childhood experiences, because we're growing, we're building capacity within ourselves. That's where a lot of this lowercase t trauma experiences happen.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it has to do with what needs were not met as you were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And trauma has everything to do with your nervous system, because your nervous system is your self-protective system. It is your survival system. It is how you physiologically experience what happened to you inside of yourself. It's a felt sense experience inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to boil it down, Darcy, to this for me. Trauma, small T trauma, if we want to call it that then, is when I feel like I'm not seen or known. I think when we feel unseen, unknown, like you spoke to earlier about it, what intimacy is, I think that creates a wound on our soul, on our psyche, on our deepest inner self.
Yeah. I think too that just because maybe of a lack of awareness, a lack of empathy, sometimes I hear language around, I don't understand, why did that affect you so bad?
Yeah.
That shouldn't have hurt you. That shouldn't have affected you.
Yeah.
And let's not compare stab wounds to 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
And you don't know what it's like to be anybody else but yourself. And, I've heard people reference like people who are experiencing depression and they can't get out of bed in the morning. I've heard language around, just snap out of it. Just come on, snap out of it. Well, those people really wish they could.
Yeah.
Your system, your nervous system, without you choosing, puts you into a self-protective state.
Yeah.
And it's not a state that you choose to go into. It's autonomic, your autonomic nervous system. It puts you into that state to protect you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, if we think about a wound on our skin, a cut, the skin opens up, the inside is exposed. That wound there's three things that could happen. It could either it could either heal, or it could remain open, exposed, sensitive. Like you're like, I can't get anything near this. It hurts too bad. Don't touch it. It alters the way let's say, if your cut is on your arm, you're not going to use that arm then, because the wound is open. It's exposed. It hurts. It's sensitive.
Yeah, you form an adaptation.
You form an adaptation to it. Or the wound may scar. It may create this covering, but the covering is numb. It's constricted. It's not its original form that allows its full expression, its full movement, its full use of that arm. It's got this big scar on it. And that scar, you can see it, and it's there, and you can feel it because it feels different. And so, I like to think of, emotional or psychic wounding or trauma, like we're talking about, in that way.
Yeah, that's a good example. And I think that everybody, like we've said, goes through life experiencing some type of overwhelming event that their system did not have the capacity at that time to find resolution in. There's two things needed in order for an overwhelming event to find resolution, to find healing. That is safety, and that is a mutually empathetic witness to be able to see you, hold space for you, listen to you, attune to you, co-regulate with you, not try to fix you, not trying to change you, but be present with you in that experience. And if you do not have those two things after an overwhelming event, then your system stays stuck with those physiological symptoms that you experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this psychic injury, this wound, this trauma. It's like it gets lodged in the nervous system.
Stuck.
It gets stuck.
Yeah.
And so some of the consequences to that, I want you to talk about, if you would. Being a certified nervous system practitioner and somatic practitioner, would love for you to speak to what is going on with this whole process of this psychic wounding, this trauma that we experience as humans. Maybe specifically like during our younger years as children. And if you can talk about that and how it plays out in your intimate romantic relationship.
Yeah. So, a big part of the work that I do is parts work, and so you're born whole, and then as you grow up and as you're developing, you have experiences that may be too overwhelming for you, like we've spoken to. And in that moment, a part of you fragments off, meaning it fragments off from the whole. You become stuck inside that experience. Essentially, when you experience something too overwhelming, your nervous system registers that as it's not safe. And you experience something inside your system telling you that that wasn't safe. Your body goes into a survival state or a protective state. Dorsovagal, sympathetic. This is the polyvagal theory developed by Stephen Porges. Has 3 autonomic tones to that. Is your ventral vagal state is where you are experiencing connection, you're present, you feel safe. Your dorsal vagal state puts you into a shutdown state, or it's where people experience dissociation, depression, or a sympathetic state, which is like your fight or flight state, where it's like the doing state. You experience a lot of anxiety, a lot of activation inside of your body.
Yeah.
And it's a self-protective mechanism. I mean, it's a beautiful design that how our bodies were created in order to protect us from an event that's way too overwhelming. And there's what's called a trauma cycle that our bodies were designed to go through to help us release that survival energy from our bodies. But because we are not aware, or we don't know how to find resolution, a lot of times, we get stuck up in our heads. Like when we feel something uncomfortable, then we'll go to our minds, our brains, to be able to make sense of it, instead of just like letting our bodies like naturally complete that trauma cycle. And maybe the best way to kind of convey this story is when I was in my trauma training, they showed a video of a polar bear, and this polar bear was being chased by a helicopter. It was what's that called when they shoot the polar bears and then to do tests on them? I always forget this word. When they shoot them with the gun and
tranquilize. To tranquilize. Yeah.
I can't ever remember that word. I tell this story so many
it's
times.
It's not a word we use very often.
I cannot ever remember the word. So anyways, in this video, they're showing this helicopter is getting ready to tranquilize this polar bear to run tests on it. And so this polar bear is running away from this helicopter. It's in flight mode because it sees a threat. And so its system is saying, you need to run away.
It's feeling fear.
It's feeling fear.
So it runs.
So it needs to run away from this helicopter. Well, the video shows this, they tranquilize it and the polar bear just collapses on the spot. So they run its tests on it. And in this video, it shows as the polar bear is coming out of this tranquilizer, it's laying on its side, but it continues to run as if it's still trying to get away from this threat, from this danger. And then you see the polar bear shake convulsively. It's releasing survival energy from its body. It's shaking. And then its heartbeat slows down, comes back to normal, and then it just gets up and walks away.
Wow.
And we are nature. We are very similar to animals.
We are animals. Animals
just know how to naturally complete that trauma cycle within themselves. When I was, after I had our babies, and I remember laying right after having our children, laying in the delivery bed. Yeah. And my body started shaking. And I didn't know why. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I tried to stop it, like put a blanket on me. I was like trying to hold myself. And I didn't have anybody there, a nurse or a doctor, to tell me, like, it's okay. Just kind of let your body gently shake. It's just, your body's experienced something traumatic. Just let it shake, like you're okay. I'm here with you.
It's just doing its thing.
It's just, your body's just
naturally. It knows what to do.
Yeah, your body's just trying to naturally release that survival energy. I've been in a car accident before where after my car accident, I remember doing the same thing, like my body was shaking. Yeah. And it's your body's attempt at trying to release survival energy from its body.
Well, you just went through something very traumatic.
Yeah.
And I think, like, you made such a great point, Darci, that when trauma happens, without this knowledge or awareness of how the nervous system works, how our bodies, our soma work, you just go to your head. You get stuck in your head, and that's not where, like, it's actually stored in your body.
Yeah, because the autonomic nervous system is subcortical.
Yeah.
It's below the head. That's where trauma is processed, it's released, it's integrated, is in the body, not in the head.
Yeah. Well, this was a huge breakthrough for us when you, so grateful when you began your training in this field, brought this to us, to me, to our children, and of course to your clients. Wow, what a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know that I was just living in my head, just replaying, ruminating, sad, depressed about the past, worried, anxious about the future. And I had no idea that my body was like, hey, listen to me. I have some things that I need you to see. I need to release some of this survival energy that you just spoke of. And because I was so unaware of that, and we'll talk about this isn't the time or place to get into it, but the process is fascinating in that if you don't listen to your body, if you don't release that survival protective energy, if you suppress it, if you numb it, distract from it, you don't face it and feel it and witness it, it results in disease. You and I have both experienced that. And again, we won't go into all the details right now about that, but that is important, I think, to note that physical disease in the form of autoimmune diseases, when the immune system gets like overactivated, or it can result in malignancies and cancers in the case of the immune system being suppressed. There's this incredible process physiologically that occurs to our bodies when we are not processing that energy that you just spoke of.
Yeah, because it becomes stored literally in your body.
Yeah.
That survival energy becomes stored in your organs. And that creates, a tremendous amount of cortisol and adrenaline being pumped through your system. And it causes inflammation in the body. And we know that the root cause of all disease is inflammation. And so much of the disease that we carry, that we experience in our lives, is due to unprocessed emotions that become trapped and stored in the body.
Yeah.
Because of not knowing about trauma, knowing about the trauma cycle, knowing about the nervous system, knowing proper, safe ways to be able to release that survival energy from your body.
When you consider your romantic relationship, are you ready to turn your fear into love, your judgment into curiosity, what seems like drudgery and work into play, your attachment into authenticity, your codependence into sovereignty? Are you ready to laugh more, sing and dance more, have mind-blowing sex, the kind where you meet the divine when you make love? Are you ready to connect on a level that you could have never imagined, first to yourself and then to your partner? Are you ready to start living? Are you ready to love and be loved without conditions, without keeping score? Are you ready to be seen and to see your partner? If you answered yes to the above, sign up for our couples retreat, More Than Love, held in a luxurious 7,000 square foot cabin in Bryan Head, Utah, September 19th through the 21st. Having divine union with your partner is not only possible, you deserve it, but it takes work. It takes understanding how and why you've been stuck in unconscious loops and patterns that were created long ago to keep you safe and to protect you, and how all of that protective armor around your heart is now weighing you down. It's preventing you from breathing. It's keeping you playing small. It's preventing connection to your higher self and to your partner. It's time to take off the masks. It's time to put the armor down. It's time to discover your authentic self. It's time to create true safety. Safety for you to be you and for your partner to be them. At this 3-day retreat, you will learn the why behind the loops and patterns that create disconnection from yourself and your partner. How to bring to your conscious awareness why you are the way you are and why your partner is the way they are. How to discover your unconscious wounding and how to heal it. How to effectively handle rupture and repair. How to heal, comfort, hold, and love your inner child. How to integrate your shadow. How to get out of your head and into your body so that you can be present. How to feel safe in your body. How to get good at feeling your feelings and sensations and to understand that they are messengers for you, trying to give you important information. How to progress toward authentic living. How to handle the delicate dance of sovereignty and connection. How to heal your sexuality. How to regulate your nervous system, how to manage your triggers, how to step into your divine masculine and feminine. If you're ready to feel safe to be seen, if you want more than love, this retreat is for you. So click on the link in the show notes to apply. I remember when you and I started learning about all this stuff and reading and researching and learning, we saw from other experts in this field they would report that these things that we're discussing right now, the nervous system, this process of adequately and appropriately attuning to your body and releasing survival protective energy so that it doesn't stay stored and trapped and stuck and cause all these physical and mental health problems. That all is largely untaught in medical school. And to our healthcare providers, at least that's traditionally in the past. I remember reading a lot of things from experts in this field, some of whom are physicians, and reporting that they never heard a word about this stuff in medical school.
It's crazy to me now knowing what we know. We speak about Gabor Mate on this podcast, but in his story, he was a medical physician and he was treating all these clients that were coming in with all of these symptoms. And he was just prescribing pills, prescribing antidotes to it just to kind of mask it. And he started asking them questions about their past and diving deeper into their histories, into their childhood experiences. And he started noticing, making the correlation between traumatic events, emotionally overwhelming events, and symptoms in his patients' bodies. I highly recommend any of his books. The Myth of Normal. He's written so many books diving deeper into these topics. But I see a lot of frustration with people who go to the doctors and their lab results, everything looks fine.
Yeah.
But they don't feel well. They know that there is something wrong. And it can be incredibly frustrating for people who know that they don't feel well, that there's something wrong. They don't have the same energy, and not knowing why. And so much of it is related to trauma and to emotionally overwhelming experiences that we have in our life. So in speaking about parts, so like I said, we're born whole, and then we have experiences throughout our childhood, throughout our lives, where we experience something that may have been too overwhelming for us. And so that part fragments off, and it's tied to us as we're growing, as we're developing. And it may not always I like to call it take the driver's seat of your life, but it's there. I'm just looking at my notes because I wanted to talk about some experiences where this might happen. So in your childhood, for example, let's say that you were a child that had a lot of big emotions and you were kind of sensitive. You showed a lot of excitement. You showed a lot of passion, and you were repeatedly told to calm down, you're too much, or you're kind of shamed for your emotional expression. Well, in order to survive that experience, you had to learn how to adapt. And so your adaptation might be you might become a people pleaser, or you learn to suppress your own emotions, to like tone yourself down. And then you learn to prioritize other people's comforts and needs over your own. How this might show up in an adult relationship is you might over apologize. You become like overly accommodating or self-sacrificing, or you have really difficulty asking. You have a really difficult time asking for your own needs to be met.
You abandon yourself.
You abandon yourself. Yeah. When we experience something as a child that's, like I said, too overwhelming, and we fragment off, it's our nervous system experiencing something too overwhelming. And so we either like become in like a sympathetic state, or our system puts us into like a shutdown state, hyperarousal or hypoarousal.
Yeah.
And that autonomic state, that energy related to that autonomic state, it just doesn't go away if you don't be able to find resolution with it. It's stored within your body. Another example might be in your childhood, like if you had a caregiver who was emotionally inconsistent or unavailable. Your parents loved you, but they were emotionally unavailable to you. Maybe they were dealing with their own trauma and their own wounds and essentially projecting it on you.
Yeah. Doing their best. Love you, yes, but not able to give you in maybe any particular moment what you needed.
Yeah. And they loved you deeply, of course, but you may have had one parent who was experiencing depression, chronic depression, and then another parent who just didn't know how to emotionally meet your needs.
Yeah.
In this, your adaptation is you become hyper independent or avoidant. And you kind of learn just to rely upon yourself, and you distrust closeness. How that might show up in an adult relationship is you keep emotionally distant. Even like committed partnerships, you keep emotionally distant because you learned that wasn't safe as a child. You struggle with vulnerability or depending on other people, or you leave or withdraw when intimacy becomes deep. Another example would be a fragmented part that didn't feel worthy growing up. So in childhood origin might be you felt invisible, you felt compared, you felt criticized a lot, or you only received love through or praise through achieving, basically doing what your parents thought was good in their eyes. So you adapt by becoming an overachiever or a performer or a perfectionist.
Or an overworker.
Yeah. You believe that your worth has to be gained through performance or success.
Fascinating.
And how that plays out in adult relationships is you feel unlovable unless you're doing.
Yeah.
Unless you're performing, unless you're achieving. And that leads to burnout.
Yeah.
From overgiving. From never feeling truly chosen or seen as you are. You become stuck in like that performer perfectionistic state.
Do you know anyone like that?
Maybe. And everybody forms adaptations in childhood. An adaptation is just what your system learned to do at the time to survive. And you carry those into your adult relationships. Yeah. Everybody does. Everybody has parts that become fragmented off, and you take those with you into your adult years. Gracie actually just told me a story about, she's a waitress, and she was taking orders, and she was helping this
is our daughter.
Daughter, yeah. She was helping an older gentleman. She said he was maybe like in his 70s. And she'd taken his order, given him his salad, and I guess he wanted like a replacement of his salad, like another salad. And she was at the register, like putting in another table's order. this grown man walked over to her in front of everyone and started yelling at her, causing a fit, a scene, saying, "Why didn't you give me my other salad? I've been waiting here. I put my order in. I want another salad. What are you doing? Give me my salad." And just this grown man was acting like a little child.
Yeah.
Why? Because for whatever reason, that situation where Gracie not meeting his needs immediately reminded him of probably an experience that he had when he was younger, where maybe his needs weren't being met. He didn't feel seen. He didn't feel noticed. So essentially what's happening is the autonomic tone of his nervous system at that time when he was a kid was coming online. It's the past being imposed on the present.
Tyranny of the past.
Tyranny of the past. And he was acting like a 12-year-old because his 12-year-old nervous system was coming online at that time.
Wow.
And you see this happen so much with reckless driving, with people getting so mad at each other.
Road
for
rage.
Yeah. These adults are acting like kids.
Yeah,
and it's because they're being reminded of something.
Yeah.
You know, from the past. Their autonomic tone from their childhood is becoming present. And that version of them is taking the driver's seat of their life.
And the home is like the petri dish for the growth of, like, this exponential growth of all of these different scenarios that we recreate in our home, in our marriages, in our romantic, intimate relationships with our kids. We recreate these scenarios based on what you're describing as something that happened in the past, some kind of wounding, some kind of nick, scratch, or cut to our psyche, to our nervous system from the past, plays out then as grown adults. We literally get hijacked and get teleported, like we talked about earlier, back to a past version of ourselves. And the home is the petri dish for that, like the laboratory, like the training grounds for those experiences. Of course, they happen elsewhere, at work, on the road, you know, in different environments and scenarios. But the home, to me, is like the epitome of where all this childhood wounding plays out. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think that, you know, another example would be where, let's say, you, as whatever your role is, let's say you just got done making dinner for your family and you ask your spouse, where you notice that your spouse isn't helping you clean up after dinner. And so you ask your spouse, "Hey, when I work so hard to make dinner for you guys and you don't help me clean up after, it makes me feel unseen, unnoticed, unappreciated." Well, if your partner, your spouse, had experiences in childhood where they were constantly criticized or feeling like they're not enough, in that moment, your spouse could become really defensive, really, like, maybe get upset. And what's happening is that experience has just enough flavoring, autonomic flavoring, to remind you of an experience of the past, that it's coming up and manifesting in that moment, and you're projecting that wound on your partner.
Yeah.
And parts work is, internal family systems, inner child work, it's all the same thing. But you cannot effectively do parts work, inner child work, unless you have an understanding of the nervous system and involve the nervous system in your healing, because it all has to do with your autonomic tone, your autonomic state of your nervous system, which is the felt sense experience of what did you feel inside of you as a kid when you experienced that. Those same physiological symptoms you will experience in your adult years, which is what essentially a trigger is. It's activation in your body that's bringing up that same autonomic tone of the past.
Yeah.
And, like if you were bullied when you were a kid, let's say you were bullied when you were 12 years old, and you didn't find resolution with that when you were 12 years old, and it put you in a state of shutdown. You kind of had to dissociate from yourself at that time, or you experienced abuse as a child, physical or sexual. Your body automatically will put you into maybe a dissociative state so that you don't have to feel the overwhelming effects of that experience.
Yeah.
And the less there's resolution in that, you will carry that into your adult years. And in your adult years, it doesn't have to be like the exact same type of situation, but it just has to have enough flavoring to it to remind you of that experience from the past.
Mm-hmm.
There's a term called neuroception, and it's basically like your body, your nervous system's threat detector, where neuroception is constantly scanning your environment, like every second of every day, asking, am I safe? Am I not safe? And it will go to your internal database of saying, where in the past have I not been safe with this? So if you were bullied as a kid, and then in your adult years, if somebody even like constructively gives you like constructive criticism, there's just enough flavoring to that to remind you of when you were a 12-year kid and you were being bullied. And your autonomic tone to that might be, I'm just going to shut down and dissociate so I don't have to feel that.
Yeah. What's really fascinating, Darci, you mentioned earlier that trauma disconnects us, fragments a part of us, disconnects us from self. And in that, it disconnects us from our bodies. Because, think about, let's say as a young child, you are presented with a scenario with your caregiver that's not overtly terrible or harmful. So we're talking about small t trauma here, but let's say something happens that makes you sense danger. As you talked about the polar bear earlier, this young child has basically, two main options. If there is danger felt, you either would experience anger, which would result in fight, or you would experience fear, which would result in flight. But there's actually a third option, because think if a young child doesn't really realistically have either of those two options available to them when they're dealing with an adult caregiver, they can't fight back. They can't run away. Option C is to suppress.
Dissociate.
Disconnect from self. An example might be, if a parent, in all their loving wisdom, were to tell a child who is throwing a tantrum, go to your room until you're able to act the right way. And the child is just feeling some things. The child's feeling some anger, or the child's feeling some fear. And the parent it makes the parent uncomfortable for them to be acting that way, especially maybe if they're in a public setting. And so the parent basically tells the child, maybe not in so many words, it is not okay for you to feel anger. It is not okay for you to feel fear. And the child internalizes that.
Yeah.
And, of course, probably unconsciously starts creating beliefs that it's not okay for me to feel fear or to feel anger. It's not okay. So I'll suppress it. I'll push it down. I'll pretend it doesn't exist. And, if you were to ask me, Darci, a couple of years ago before I started my healing journey, if you were to just simply ask me, Brandon, tell me in detail what you feel right now. I'd be like, what do you mean? I don't know. I don't know what I feel. But if you were to ask me, Brandon, tell me in detail what you're thinking right now. Oh, I'd have a long list, because this whole process that we've been discussing disconnected me from my body. I didn't know any longer how to feel. I had long forgotten that.
Yeah.
And was living in my head. As you mentioned earlier, 95% of most of our human experience, 95% of it is on autopilot, unconscious programming and patterns. And it's really fascinating.
It is. And, I think that's where people maybe start feeling stuck in like talk therapy. And this isn't to talk down on talk therapy, because we both have received benefits from it. There's something to gain from receiving insight from as to why you are the way that you are. But because trauma involves the nervous system, and the nervous system is your felt experience of that, your sensational experiences of what you experienced, insight alone is not going to regulate your nervous system. Insight alone is not going to help you fully integrate overwhelming emotional experiences that you have, because those experiences are stored inside your nervous system. It literally leaves like a neural tag on your nervous system telling you that experience was not safe. That felt experiences of that was not safe. And so regulating your nervous system and in healing from overwhelming experiences that you have inside your body requires you to basically be able to stay present with what you are with that experience without the overwhelm, without causing you to go into a protective state. Our bodies were so beautifully designed, like I said, to automatically put us into protective states. The problem is when people become stuck in that protective state and they don't know why. They don't know why they feel the way that they do. They don't, a lot of these things, we were speaking about this last night, is the difference between like adaptations and personality. Because what I've found with a lot of people that I work with is they just think that like their people pleasing tendency or their controlling or whatever it may be is just like a part of their personality.
Yeah.
But really it's just protective patterns. It's just protective parts running the show. And integration, like integrating those parts into the whole, like feeling whole again. I mean, you're always whole. It's just reclaiming,
remembering
and remembering that wholeness and integrating those parts into your life. And it's not that we don't like our younger parts, we don't want to dismiss them, we don't want them to like go away. They're a part of us, they're a part of our story, but we want to integrate them into our adult self. And there's a process of doing that somatically and engaging with them at the felt sense experience.
Yeah, I think for me, it was so beautiful to understand, yes, like cognitively, but also deeply feel within me that I made sense. Like when you really start to do this work, this healing work, this self-discovery, you start to realize, you of course take accountability for the mistakes you've made, the pain you've caused.
Yeah.
But I remember feeling an overwhelm of compassion for myself too, and love and forgiveness and understanding, and just this overwhelming knowing that I made sense.
Yeah.
We all make sense.
Yeah. And that state of love and compassion, that's the only state that you can heal in. You have to be predominantly anchored in your ventral vagal state, which is like your regulated, your state where you feel connection, you feel present. Your body, even if it's just in tiny micro moments of when you're working with somebody, like when I work with my clients, of helping them experience, even if it's just tiny micro moments of connection, of safety. In those moments, you can release just a little bit of survival energy. And so I just want to offer just a simple practice that you can do. Obviously, in my programs, we dive a lot deeper into parts, but one is recognizing when you get triggered and feeling those sensations in your body, of noticing when you're getting triggered, when you're feeling activation, or when you start dissociating. And then asking yourself, excuse me, when is the earliest time in my life that I can remember feeling this way? And connecting to that part of being able, it's really important to be able to differentiate yourself from your adult self and from your parts. And that differentiation is so critical, because when you're anchored in your adult self, in your ventral vagal state, you feel present, calm, collected. Then you're able to notice, oh, this is just like a younger part of me feeling and experiencing this wound from the past. I can differentiate myself. And in that moment, what I term internal regulation, where in that experience in session, but you can do this at home as well. It's very helpful to have that, to do this with somebody that you can co-regulate with, and actually essential in your healing journey is this co-regulation of being seen in this process. But is in that moment, you offer to your younger self compassion. Oh, I know why you're here. It's okay. I see you. I understand. I love you. It's okay. I got you. Your younger parts need from you to feel love and to feel compassion, to feel seen, and they need to feel protected. The experience of feeling safe and feeling loved, but also deeply protected by you. I'm not going to let anything hurt you again. And your younger parts do not need that from anybody else. Not from a parent, not from a spouse, not from a friend. They need it from you. And that's that process of internal regulation, of somatically and sensationally creating new experiences, the felt sense experience inside yourself with your younger parts. So the next time you get triggered by something, that part has almost like calmed down, because it feels seen, it feels heard, it feels understood, and it feels protected. Not just knowing, but it feels it. And there's a process that we go through that. But I just want to offer, if this is something that is resonating with you and bringing up some things for you, is just start the process of like differentiating between your adult self and between your younger parts, your inner child, and asking yourself, when was the first time in my life I remember feeling this way? And start creating a relationship with your younger self, of seeing them and understanding them and loving them. They just want to be loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such beautiful work, Darci. Thank you so much for bringing this to our awareness, me and the kids, and it's just been life-changing. If our listeners want deep connection with self, deep connection and intimacy with their person, their people, if they want to reconnect to their body, if they want to actually fully express authentically, if they want to actually fully live present in the present moment so that they can really experience their life, not run from it, not distract from it, not numb it, not suppress it, not avoid it, but to really fully live. How can our listeners find you?
Yeah. Just my website, www.holoshealing.info. We'll put a link in the show notes. They can fill out a form there and reach out to me through email. And my Instagram handle, you can find out more information about me and about the work that I do. But I just find it such a sacred privilege to be in this space with people, of helping them come to understand and know themselves better, to love themselves more fully, to see themselves more fully, and to integrate all of their parts so that they can reclaim themselves, reclaim their wholeness, and live the life that they were created to live. You know, resonance is your birthright. It's not something you should have to earn or seek to achieve. It is your birthright. Yeah. And it's such a gift. It's such a sacred privilege for me to be able to hold space for people, to witness them in their human experience, to witness them in their journey of self-discovery, and holding that space for people. I love what I do. Yeah. Every day I wake up and I am so excited to go to work and to be in that space with people. Yeah. I really love it so much.
Can I just say, and you're incredibly gifted at it.
You're biased, but thank you.
Well, no, I may be, but one of the true highlights and joys of my life has been seeing you step into this incredible work that you do and blossom into your gift of, like I've said before, you know, we are our own medicine, but your gift is in helping others to know that. Helping others, guiding them, leading them, teaching them, witnessing them in such a loving and compassionate way that you help others so beautifully come to the knowing that they are their own medicine. They are their own healers. And I thank you. I'm so proud of you. And I love you.
I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That was so kind. I just want to say that I guess the way I'm able to show up so compassionately and lovingly in that space is because of my own lived experience with it. I know what it feels like to reclaim your wholeness, to integrate your parts, because I've experienced it myself. Yeah. And that has provided me the ability and the empathy in order to offer that to others. So super grateful. Thank you. That was so sweet.
Oh, you're welcome.
You so much.
I love you. I see you.
I know you do. I see you too.
Is it okay? I wrote a poem yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Is it okay if we finish out the episode with a poem?
Yes, I'm so excited.
Knowing that today we were going to be talking about parts work and inner child, I wrote a poem.
Oh my gosh. I'm so
I
excited.
hope I don't get too emotional. I used to believe that love, my worth, and my value were to be earned. This wasn't just in my head. It was felt deep within my body. It was something that I learned. When the pain was too much, I distracted myself with work. I lashed out at others. Sometimes I could be such a jerk. Striving, working, doing more. Needing from others what I hadn't learned to give myself always left me disappointed, So I turned to little Brandon and asked him what he needed himself. Turns out the emptiness and lacking originated in betrayal, abandonment, rejection, and shame. The pain I felt was seeking soothing in all the wrong places. I was caught up playing the game. Misunderstood, especially by myself. I blocked the love that was offered me by others. I didn't come into this world broken, lacking, or not enough. It was an acquired belief. Learning that I held the power, the wisdom, and the medicine to unbecome was such a relief. The awareness that the pain I felt from others had nothing to do with me didn't make it hurt any less, but it did allow me to begin to see. That I was always enough. I was always whole. Little Brandon was perfect just the way he was. He didn't need to work to earn love. He deserved it just because. Still now, sometimes those wounds are exposed and the pain reappears. But now I know its source. I know it's untrue. I'm able to give little Brandon what he didn't get all those years. I sit down cross-legged in front of him. I look him in the eyes. I comfort him. I protect him. I hold him. I love him. He feels safe with me. When I hold his chubby little hand, he looks up at me with wonder and amazement at what we've unbecome. He finally feels so free.
So beautiful.
Thanks.
I'm so proud of you. Thank you for sharing. What a gift.
Thank you. Thank you, listeners, for tuning into this episode of Safe to Be Seen. We look forward to having you tune back in with us next week. Have a great day.
Free to be me, free to sing, sweet feathers envelop me like a hug, whispering melodies.
The Safe to Be Seen podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Darci and Brandon Burke do not claim to be experts. We have no intention to defend our beliefs or impose them onto others. This podcast provides a space to allow for us to share with others what it's like to be us. We desire to share our human journey with others. We advise you to seek professional counsel, therapy, and or treatment from trained, credentialed, and certified professionals for any emotional, mental, and or physical conditions you may be experiencing.